What's the most important technology that you can master as a B2B entrepreneur in today's age of AI? Here's a hint. It's not AI. It's not even automation. No, the most important technology that you can master in the age of AI sits between your ears. It's your mind, which is exactly what Roderick Walker and I, who's the Chief Executive Officer at Tavros Care, Roderick and I will be talking through this today to help you. Hey, I'm J.R. Lay, and I'd like to welcome you back to another Level Up Business podcast where we help you level up your mind, marketing, and sales so that you can level up your business and your life as a B2B entrepreneur. Now, before we get into today's conversation with Rod, if you are a B2B entrepreneur, I'm willing to bet that you have unique wisdom, that you have a unique story to tell, just like Rod is going to share with you today. Maybe you've thought about sharing video content on social media, or perhaps you thought about writing a best-selling book, but the problem is you let self-limiting beliefs stop you from sharing that unique wisdom. You let self-limiting beliefs prevent you from telling a story to help others level up their business. So if you've been thinking about how to elevate your brand to increase revenue, send me a text right now, 832-240-1922, and I will show you how easy it is to turn video content into a best-selling book simply by having a conversation just like the one Roderick and I are about to have with you. Welcome to the show, Rod. It is so good to share time with you today, buddy.
Likewise, good to see you. Thanks for the invitation. I'm excited. It's been a while since we talked.
It has been a while since we've talked, and in prepping for our conversation to unlock and share some of the unique wisdom that you have gained as an entrepreneur to help other entrepreneurs level up on their own entrepreneurial journey. Before we get too far deep into that, what is good for you? What is positive in your world right now? What's going well?
Well, I just a couple of weeks back spent time with all three of my sons, and I got a middle son who lives in Scottsdale, and I'm in Oregon, and another son that's like between Portland. So it's just trying to get everybody together at this point, because they all are busy with their lives. So it was nice. My oldest son had his 31st birthday, so everyone came out. We were in Vegas, spent the weekend, cooked, ate. So, I mean, that's probably the thing that's sticking out the most here in the last couple of weeks. It was just good to have everybody together. We had a great time. Yeah. So
you're spending time with the people that matter most to make memories that will last a lifetime.
Yes, absolutely.
Speaking about a lifetime, you have had quite the journey, going from UPS trucks, driving UPS trucks. You've got the wedding business. You've done some consulting. You've been featured on Hollywood Live. You've moved into the healthcare business. Mm-hmm. But when someone asks, and you look back over all of that experience, what's been the biggest lesson that you've learned along the way as an entrepreneur?
Oh man, the biggest lesson. Boy, I'm going to say that's probably linked to the just drive and that ambition. I mean, I think that people have different ambitions for just different things, whatever it is that you feel ambitious about, that drive. You have those two things together. I think that just pulls you through so many different situations, and or at least that's been my experience. So, there's been a lot of things that I've not really known how I was going to get through it or how it was going to work out, but just focusing in, saying I'm going to find a way. I think just being hungry with wanting to work, willing to put in the work. But that all comes back down to drive, I think. I've had it. I thank God and the universe for blessing me with it. It's just always been there. And I think just being able to tap into that. I do think that's something that everyone has. It's just maybe you're not clear on what that is, that drive for what. But I think we all have it in us somewhere. And just being able to tap into that and mixing that with a little ambition, being around good folks like yourself, like-minded individuals. We met in a coaching group that we were blessed to be a part of. So I think it's a combination of all those things. That's what I would go to first. That's been a cornerstone of life for me.
That's a fantastic point. Ambition, drive. But I think the big thing that I heard from you, and the most important for someone watching or listening, and I agree with you, Rod. We all have that.
Hmm.
I think a couple of things. I don't think that some of us believe it. I think some of us, we've lost it.
Yeah.
And to your point, though, it's like you were always able to reconnect back into something that was bigger than yourself, that you said that got you through some situations that you weren't sure how at the moment. But
Yeah.
it's almost like any why is going to surpass any how. And
Absolutely.
if you think back on your journey, what what's the why? And your perhaps your why has changed over the years through different seasons of life.
Hmm.
But, but what's the why that has driven you, to use your word, driven, ambitious?
Well, the why, it started out of just some heartache and a tough childhood. Didn't have the best childhood, and so went through some things that were pretty difficult. But I just think, just as a kid, I remember being 10 and 11 and thinking, if I ever have kids, I want to make sure that I'm going to be a solid role model for them. I want to be there for them. I want to impact their lives in a positive way. And man, James, I gotta say, probably 10 or 11. I just remember just thinking about that, and that was so. Um, my ex-wife and I, we got pregnant when we were, I want to say 18 and a half, 19. And so that why has really been driven a lot by family. And it's just as far back as I can think. It was just family and that responsibility, and got people to take care of. So that has that's probably the foundation of everything that I've done. When I look back on like decisions I've made, it's been about, okay, well, I have people depending upon me, and I have a commitment to these people, and that has been a big part of it. There also has been a lot of times where I'm just like questioning myself: can I do this? Am I up for this challenge? Who do I have to be, or what do I have to develop in myself to be able to, build a business to 100,000, and then now to 1 million, and then what is it like to get to 2 million, 5 million, 10 million? Like, it's just those things that have just constantly been in the background. So it's probably a couple of whys, but I would say number one would probably have been that, like, the family and taking care of the people that I've been responsible for.
Well, that idea of the why, it is bigger than yourself.
Absolutely. Yes.
And it started from a past experience, and you saw another way forward. You didn't know how. Once again, you just knew you were driven from that place of purpose, that ambition, that drive. And I think it's interesting you use that word drive, because let's go back a little bit. You were a UPS driver, so you literally were driving through life, Rod.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's interesting too, because if I think about like a UPS driver back then, it's so different than like what the idea is today. Because I would assume like Amazon wasn't back then,
Yeah.
right?
No, it was yeah, it was a different world. Gosh, that was my dream job too. I was like 18 and like, man, I want to be a UPS driver. Like, that was just, I just thought that was going to be the ultimate job. And I got on one when I was like 21, and I drove for, I think it was close to 10 years. And I loved it. I mean, you got to be out, and every day was different, and you got to be out in public, meeting a bunch of different people, and it was kind of a go, high pace, how much can you get done, type of environment. And I loved it. It was a fun time. And UPS, they really instilled in me like a work ethic. Like, you have to be, it's not as easy as it looks. Like, you're going there's anywhere from 150 to 200 stops a day that you're making, and scheduling, and you have deadline. It's just a lot of stuff that goes into it, and their training program. And it's just like, that was really the first time that I got to see how a business should run. And it served me a lot in life too, because yeah, I mean, starting out as an entrepreneur, I was able to take a lot of lessons from that job as well. At the time, I didn't know that, though. At the time, I was just like, they're kind of being hard asses, and they're they're just on you. But
Well,
yeah,
it's kind of like,
it was
it's like
great.
Steve Jobs says, you can only connect the dots by looking backwards. And
Yes, that's so true.
it's and I think that's what I want to do is I want to connect a lot of these dots looking backwards for you because you've got a lot of wisdom that you've gained along the way. It's interesting too when you talk about that UPS experience in driving. How what is your Colby A
Let
index?
me 3394.
So that I had a suspicion the way that you just described that experience is you
Uh-huh.
were initiating quick start. So that gave you a lot of energy to go out and like kind of just quick start all
Yes.
of these different days and stops and people. And it was
Yes.
always a new experience. It was always fresh. It was always
Hmm.
something new. But then there was a turning point.
Yeah.
And if I think if what I know about UPS is true, you mentioned the training. It's like you try to create a route that you always have to take right turns, right turns, right turns to
Were
shorten
you
your.
a driver too? Yeah, that's 100% accurate. Yes. Yeah.
I, I study, I learn. I want to know how kind of the world works, even down to the nuances of like I don't know. It might have even been like an MBA class or something that we were
Okay. All
talking
right.
about,
Yeah.
like this idea of efficiency. But you took a turn, life took a turn,
Uh-huh.
and you left the security of that job with UPS, and you dove into the world of entrepreneurship.
Yes.
What what was the impetus for that?
Well, I want to say it's somewhere around 90, I think it's 97. It's probably probably 6, 7 years into driving. I ended up with vertigo, but we didn't know it was vertigo. I had like some rare virus, and I got misdiagnosed with an autoimmune disease. Actually, I had two misdiagnoses. So it was they thought it was an autoimmune disease. It ended up being a virus. And then I was essentially bedridden for almost 2 years with this vertigo, so I couldn't drive. I want to say about 2 months in, we're going to, it's a local hospital up in the Pacific Northwest, Oregon, OHSU, and they're like a training school for doctors. It's like world renowned, but they misdiagnosed me with a brain tumor. I had a growth. It was benign, but I sat with that for a week, and that was probably very. That was probably the pivotal point. I think. I mean, I've had a lot of pivotal points, but for being an entrepreneur, that's definitely what set me on fire. Because I'm like, okay, well, back to the family thing, and I told you ever since I was 10. And at this point, when I'm 26 or 27, I have three kids now, three sons, and my wife, and I'm like, okay, well, if I don't survive this, you know, are they going to be okay? I mean, I think I only had 100,000 in a 401k back then, and I was like, that's not going to last a long time if I don't survive this. So that got me to thinking, like, what other things can I do to make money? And I was just like kind of starting to go down that path of entrepreneurship. I think when I was around 19, one of my first jobs, I worked with an entrepreneur. He had a mobile car wash company. And so I did that for about 2 years. And it was more like a sole proprietorship for me because I had to do my own taxes. I had to set up a route, go out, collect the money, meet the customer. So there was a lot of things that I got to do. So it was like a business within a business. But I kind of started thinking about that a little bit. I thought about college, just a lot of different things. But I said, I have to make more money because if this doesn't go well, if the doctor said, if it's a brain tumor, we can't operate. So I was like, okay, that's a death sentence. So that was a tough week for sure. But that was definitely the spark looking back that made me say, okay, I need to look at something different. And it was college or start a business. Those were the two things that were in front of me. And
It's interesting because you talk about this experience with the brain tumor, and how the brain, the mind connection, and the way it's like I perceive this is like the brain is the biological machine, it's the biological computer. The mind is the software. And when I think about your story and what you've experienced, the role that mindset has played. Mindset being the foundation of growth, the foundation of your growth.
Hmm.
When you think about just business, entrepreneurship, belief systems, what role did your mind and mindset play in this first chapter of your entrepreneurial journey, especially when it came to one of those early ventures? You mentioned the mobile car wash, but the network marketing, how the network marketing then parlayed into building a premium wedding business, because you had 10 services under one roof, did
Yeah.
like 400 or 500 different events. But let's go back to the mind and the mindset that provided the path forward here for you. What was that?
Man, these are some good questions. I started out talking about drive, and I think that mindset is what magnified and amplified the drive. So the mindset was, yeah, that was what magnified and amplified everything. Because of some of the things I went through as a kid, I felt like I knew how to go through difficult times. Wasn't scared of being in difficult situations, difficult circumstances. I actually, at a point, kind of felt comfortable around the chaos, shall we say, and knowing how to navigate it and knowing how to get out of it. So that kind of became my thing. It was just like, okay, yeah, this may suck, but I know I can get through it. I know I can figure it out. I just don't know how long I'm going to be in it. And I
That's an
remember,
interesting point. I want to pause you because you
yeah,
brought up something I think is we can't gloss over. You've referenced the childhood a couple of times, and something today, Corey Proctor, another entrepreneur, he's also been a guest on this podcast. I had made a note about something about, I noticed, like, for example, when things would get too calm in my life, even as an entrepreneur, it's like I'd go and I would self sabotage.
yeah,
I'd go create chaos for chaos sakes because I was comfortable. I was more comfortable in the chaos
yeah,
than I was in the calm. And all I can tie that back to for myself is also childhood environment.
hmm,
And Corey Proctor, he had mentioned himself, he was like, sometimes I swear we love the chaos, thinking from an entrepreneurial perspective. You've been around a lot of entrepreneurs, different groups. Wh- where is that connection with chaos and the entrepreneurial mind, the entrepreneurial journey? Because
mm.
it's an interesting thing of, does it draw us? Does it drive us? Are we more comfortable in a chaotic space? What's your thought on that?
My thought, my situation, I was in a chaotic situation just with the family setting. It was a strict religious household, which didn't necessarily have an issue with that. A lot of morals and values that I still hold on to today were came out of that. So I do appreciate that because that's definitely made it part of or made me part of who I am. But I went through a lot of physical abuse and some sexual abuse, and then you add the religious component, and at that time things were just kind of kept quiet, swept under the rug, and I was just living in this chaotic situation, and I had to learn how to adapt. I had to learn how to get through. That story I shared with you at the beginning of the podcast about being 10 or 11, that was probably a big reason why at such a young age I was just like, gosh, if I ever have kids, I'm going to make sure they're protected. I'm going to make sure they're safe. I'm going to make sure I take care of them. And so my experience has more so been around just being in those situations, and out of that, I learned I had this knack to be able to go through these uncomfortable situations, still have that mindset, still have that drive and that ambition to get through. It just happened to be when I was 10, it was like, I just have to make it to 18. If I can just make it to 18, if I can just, not do anything that's going to cause me an inordinate amount of harm, I can do this. So I came up with strategies, and it's weird to even think back. I haven't thought about this in a while, but just looking back, so that that's been my experience. And then stepping into an entrepreneur, or becoming an entrepreneur and stepping into entrepreneurship, I think just being around the chaos, it just didn't seem like a big deal. Went through a period, and this still happens at times, but we went through like a period when we were first starting up. It's just a bunch of ugly wins. But to me, I was like, well, we got the win though. And it was chaos, but I was always able to say, okay, how do we put this in order? Or how do we get through this? Or what's the direction? What's the next step? That I just believe that's a gift that God has given me. It's always been there. I don't know what other than that, I don't know where it would have came from. So I've just always been able to tap into that. So with other friends that are entrepreneurs, I have noticed what you're referring to earlier. I think there is a part of us that can probably deal with more chaos and deal with things being kind of all over the place, and knowing how to survive through that, but also having this vision of like, okay, here's this chaos, but if I can tweak this and tweak that and make this go together, now I can build something. I can just make that work. And that's a skill set in itself when you really think about it, because you're looking at everything that's broken and you're figuring out, and in your mind you've already worked it out, you've already figured out like how to fix it, and no one around you sees that, but you're the only one who sees it, and you know how to fix it, you know how to, and then you're making this tremendous bet on yourself. That's a different skill set even in itself.
Well, if I think about everything going on right now, it feels like specifically since 2020, we'll use that as an inflection point.
Mm-hmm.
The world, the perception has at a macro level has become more increasingly uncertain. A lot of conflict, a lot of chaos. And in your own experience, you mentioned like you were thinking through strategies beyond that, even at an early age. And now connect that back to the wedding business. Once again, you had the 10 services, one roof, 400 to 500 weddings. How did you begin to apply? And it wasn't just strategies, but it was also systems that you were using to build and scale that business.
The Walmart Supercenter came to town. Raised my kids in Oregon, and so small town right outside of Portland. Salem is the capital. But I remember when the Walmart Supercenter came to town, and it reminded me of this grocery store that I had saw 10 years previous when we were teenagers. Me and a friend of mine, when we were at, we used to do these road trips from Sacramento up to Redding, and there was this store. I think they're primarily on the West Coast, Fred Meyer's. And it was the first time I saw a grocery store with a home improvement, hardware, clothing, just everything, one-stop shop, everything. And fast forward to, gosh, I want to say it was probably 99, somewhere there, 99, 2000, these Walmart Supercenters started popping up. And so I'm like, okay, this is a trend. This has to be a trend. Like these grocery stores, the one-stop shopping, the convenience. Walmart at the time, either they were the largest corporation or they were just about to overtake, maybe it was GE, I can't remember at the time, but I'm like, okay, so they know what they're doing. So there's something to this. So being the good entrepreneur that I am, you copy, you don't innovate, you just copy what's working. So this idea behind the weddings, it came from that, just literally watching what these big businesses were doing. And I'm like, okay, what's the strategy behind it? Well, that wasn't really hard to figure out. You get a family into the store and we can capture all of their business by just having them here if we put everything in front of them. And I thought, okay, that sounds pretty good. That seems like a good strategy.
Right.
So back to like the UPS. I was off for like 2 years dealing with the medical thing. Took about 2 years to get through that virus. Then I started driving again. But at this point, I had chosen to be an entrepreneur. So looking for business opportunities. I think I mentioned I was dabbling a little bit in some of the network marketing companies, but the network marketing company, I got to spend some time with the founder, and he was all about wealth creation, talked a lot about like how wealth is created and made in America. And we talked a lot about business systems. I had UPS. It's just like connecting all these dots. And so the next progression for me was like, okay, that's what it is. I just need to find the opportunity. So fast forward to the Walmart supercenters, and then one of the friends that I had in the network marketing company, we kind of created our own little mini mastermind. Hey, let's meet every Saturday and just kick around business ideas, and let's see what comes out of that. And
Yeah.
3 Saturdays later, and we're like, we can't miss no matter what. 3 Saturdays later, he's like, hey, I have to go do this wedding. I can't make it. And I was like, no, remember we said we can't miss. And he was like, well, you want to
Now
come
you got
with
accountability.
yeah, right. So he was like, "Well, hey, what if you come with me? And we'll do it together. I have to DJ." He was in college. He said, "I have to DJ this wedding, and it's this couple in college classmates that were getting married, but it was like a 200-person wedding." And he said, "Hey, you're good at BSing. Do you want to MC? Do you mind grabbing the mic and making the announcement?" So I was like, "Sure, I'll do it. I don't know these people. I don't mind. I'm not going to be
Right.
embarrassed." I had no clue what I was doing, James. No clue. At one point during the reception, I asked one of the bridesmaids. I was like, "Hey, how do you think the couple wants to be introduced? Like what order?" Because we weren't sure. So I kind of tried to finagle that. She's like, "Oh yeah, let me write it." So I didn't even know the bride and groom's name. It was just like, family and friends, let's welcome the bride and groom. And we had 5 or 6 couples that were getting married. It was like a huge wedding party. I want to say there was like 9 bridesmaids and nine groomsmen. But we had like 4 or 5 of them come up to us and said, "Hey, you guys did a great job. Would you DJ our wedding?" And so out of that was born this DJ and wedding business. And that's where it started.
Wow.
And then it's like I'm looking at the Walmart Supercenter thing. And I had another friend who, back to the UPS, had a friend who owned a limo company. So he was like, "Hey, we do all these runs to the local casino and things like that, but we're starting to get into weddings." And so then it's slowly coming together for me, James. I'm like, okay, the DJ, there's the limo, and then there was another friend who did flowers. And so from there, I just started putting all these different ideas together. And I was like, okay, what if we could do photography? What if we could do videography? And we would have the wedding version of a Walmart Supercenter. And that's where it started. So,
Wow. So once again, it's like you're in real time connecting all of these dots from past experiences that were completely not connected, but now they're becoming highly connected. And I think that's where the idea of systems and processes that lead to scale. But I know from an entrepreneurial mind specifically, like I'll be the first one to step in line. When we think about Colby and initiating quick starts, for example, like I'm a 3294. I'm resistant to systems naturally. I'm looking to look for every possible way to break a system to find a shortcut, which is a gift in and of itself, because then you can, bypass a lot of things too. But for entrepreneurial leaders and for founders who naturally resist systems, they naturally resist structure, they naturally resist process, which I think about the book coming out of EOS recently by that title, Process. What would you say to them about the power of systems that have led to scale, strategies that have led to scale in your own entrepreneurial journey?
I would say I would give the advice that I live by. I mean, I'm resistant to systems and process personally. I am not resistant to systems and process in business. I never have been. And UPS probably played a critical role in that, looking back. I got to see process. I mean, when you got trained to drive, back then it was like a 2, maybe 3 week training. But James, I mean, it's like they called them I think it was called like the 340 methods. and they're teaching you how to get into the truck. Like you're grabbing the handrail with your right hand, and then you have your keys on like the middle finger, and it's like, and then you step up in and you sit down and you turn to your right, and the keys are right here, the ignition, and you twist and turn, you put your seatbelt on, you take off the parking brake. I mean,
That's muscle memory right there.
I still they drilled it into it. Like I still remember this like 30 years later. And but you know what? It worked. It's the way they trained everyone, and it was efficient. And I never forgot that. I never forgot it. And I'm like, okay, they have every process down. And you mentioned the right turns there earlier. All of the routes, they went out and did time studies on like what the average amount of traffic or time you're sitting in traffic, and that's how they came up with you only make right hand turns because trying to cross the street, that's going to cause more time. Just all of these things. I'm like, wow, they have a process for everything. So clearly they know what they're doing. So
Well, that's where you've made another shift.
yeah, it was because it's like I knew for success that had to be part of it. Now, do I like process per se? No, I like kind of breaking stuff. I'm an entrepreneur, like want to break it and put something new together. But I know like whatever that new thing is, there's going to have to be a process for it. And then out of that process, you're going to refine and innovate it as well. So I knew that. And then during that time period where I got sick as well, there was a company, I'm not sure if they're still around, Nightingale Conant. They had all these books on tape for your audience that don't know what tapes are. There were these little square things that we used to listen to music and
After the 8-track, but before
right.
the CD.
That's right. That's right. So dating myself, but in my Walkman, like one of the first cassette tape series I got was the E-Myth, which was Michael Gerber, and they talked about the franchise prototype and systems and process, and how every great company built mastered systems and process. So even though it wasn't my first go-to, I knew it had to be there because that's where success comes from. So I think just because of that, I wasn't as resistant, or actually I wasn't resistant at all. I was the main one preaching systems in business. But I also knew I'm not going to probably run the system. I can help put it together, but I'm not going to run it. So I had to get somebody else to charge that.
Yeah, make it up, make it real, make it repeat. If I think about like what we've
Yes.
learned from Dan over at Strategic Coach.
Yes.
But you've taken that now. You've opened up a new chapter once again in the healthcare space, and as we start to wrap up, every connection point has led to the next. Every experience is built upon the last.
Mm-hmm.
And if I think about what you've done is you've leveled up your mind every step of the way. And as you've leveled up your mind, you've leveled up your business, you've leveled up your life. It's all interconnected. When you look back as to all of these connection points, what are you most excited about when it comes to just the future? Because once again, it's like, I think many perceive we are living in confusing and chaotic times, but you still have a perspective of hope going forward as an entrepreneur. What lights that flame for you?
Boy, maybe this is probably part of when we talked about wisdom at the beginning of the podcast. This what I'm about to talk about right now is just something that I've always instinctively or intuitively understood about people. So we talked earlier about macro, and I spend probably most of my time in the micro. And what I mean by that is I feel like I've always been able to connect the dots from just a human experience standpoint. So I mentioned some of the stuff I went through with my family, but I saw other families that operated completely 180-degree opposite of how my family operated. I saw how people, when I first got my first job, I saw how some people showed up to work and how other people showed up to work, how some people were super thorough, very detailed, other people were just kind of lackadaisical. At a young age, I felt like I kind of understand human behavior and what you can expect. I don't know what the percentages are, but I remember I had this old mentor who used to say like a third of the people, you're going to beat because they're not going to even show up. And then a third of the people you can beat by outworking. And then another 30% you can, they're going to be hard workers, but that last like 3 to 5%, those are going to be your competition. And I never really forgot that. And I thought that, okay, this is interesting, but this is kind of, you start to see how some of these patterns develop just with humans. And so where I'm going with that is I feel like even though things are chaotic, you can kind of predict what's going to happen. You can look at how people treat each other, how people interact. There's like, I mean, our coaching group, and it's how we met. And it's like every time we go to one of our workshops, the room is just electric. It's on fire, right? We just have that energy. It's just buzzing. Why is
And you
that?
can feel it.
You're right. But why is that? Because we have 40, 50 entrepreneurs that are all on the same page, showing up, figuring out how can I make my business better? How can I make the world better? How can I leave it better than the way I found it? So there's a group of people that are going to be focused on that. You're also going to have a group of people that are focused on how can I leave this world in a worse place, or how do I change this? That's a real thing that we don't like to talk about, but there are a certain percentage of
Yeah.
people that think that way and feel that way and are going to act accordingly. But I think that just these little things that we see day in, day out, like if you look at how you interact in relationships, how families treat each other, how things unfold in romantic relationships, or parents with their kids, and you could see some people that have great relationships, and it's like, oh, what was that about? Well, people put it into the relationship. Both people spent time together. They learned how to communicate. They wanted to communicate. They had that drive, right? That ambition to build a. Well, the reverse is true for the people that didn't. We see all these little examples, and it's like, okay, that's what goes on a micro level. Now let's push that out to a macro level. What happens when nations are really communicating well together? They're allies, right? They figure out how to work together. It may not be in this other nation's interest, but these two nations, we're on the same page, we're communicating, we're together. That's what you can expect. When you have the communication breakdown, when you have people feeling like, hey, this is my way and this way is right, and you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about. We know what happens with that on a micro level in relationships. We kind of know how that's going to go on a macro level too. And so I don't necessarily, I don't claim to know how I don't feel like I know how everything's going to work out. I'm saying what I feel like I know is what human behavior is and what we can expect. And so, yeah, we can expect some chaos, but we also can expect that there's going to be some of us that are going to say, nope, that's enough. We need to figure this shit out. We need to back off of that. We need to do more of this. We need to make course adjustments. That's what it's been throughout human history. And I don't think that's ever going to change. How that plays out, I don't know. But I know it's going to play out that way.
Well, Rod, let me tell you, when it comes to history, thanks for walking down history lane and sharing your journey, sharing your path, and the little pearls of wisdom that you have unpacked for everyone who's watching, everyone who's listening, and to connect this last point, it's the connection,
Yeah.
it's the conversation,
Yes.
and it's just being willing to learn, it's being willing to share, and it's being willing to continue to level up
Yes.
together on this journey. As we do wrap up here, Rod, what is the best way for someone to connect with you, as we have started a conversation, but they might be thinking, you know what? I like Rod. I want to connect with Rod. How do I get in touch with Rod? What's the best way for someone watching or listening to do that, Rod?
I would say probably just email. Rod at tavroscare.com. That's my email. I don't know if you want to put it up or how that works. I'm not the technical podcast person, but like if you want to put a link to that, I'm just happy to be a part of this process and be part of this new venture that you're launching. And I'm always open to have conversations and do these types of things and talk about business experience, talk about wisdom. So that really does fill my cup up. So if I can be of service, I would love to, but I'm just also happy to be part of this community, and the invitation, I just greatly appreciate it, man.
Well, we thank you as well, Rod, and I really appreciate you joining me for another Level Up Business podcast. This has been a lot of fun today.
Likewise, I have enjoyed it, and I'm really happy that we got to connect. Thank you.
I want to thank you again for joining me for another Level Up Business podcast. Now's the time. Right now, now's the time to stop letting your self-limiting beliefs hold you back from helping others by sharing your unique wisdom, just like Rod shared with us today. That's because there are people in this world right now who need your help. They need your authentic intelligence. They don't want artificial intelligence. They want your authentic intelligence. They want to watch your video. They want to learn from you. They want to read your best-selling book. So text me right now, 832-240-1922, and I'll show you how quick and easy it is to elevate your brand so that you can increase revenue by turning video content into a best-selling book.